time is now. On everything. Took my heart away from money. I ain't interested in fame. And I pray that never change. Ambition is priceless. It's something that's in your veins. And I put that on my name.
Only hope I had was selling. Was on my grind cause times was harder than to sell a float. My mama told me never steal and never telling folks. I grew up looking up the that was selling. Oh, I was raised by the stop sign. No religion, I was getting saved by the nine. By the minute, I was getting paid like a hotline. Certain rollers, fiends was calling. We was that kind, well connected, well respected, and well protected. And get accepted, was rejected, now they regret it. And get my message, was the signal when I was texting. The I was calling was fraud, and I learned my lesson. Now I move with aggression, use my mind as a weapon.
In a tough season for the St. Louis Rams, going 7-9 in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, the NFC West. The Rams fall to 7-9. Sam Bradford gets hurt. You get thrown in a Kellen Clemens. And not a bad season for the St. Louis Rams as we welcome you into the NFL team breakdowns. I'm the host today, Robert Dieters, alongside me, Nick Rice. Nick, the Rams last season, man, just some injuries to fall. You lose your starting quarterback. You throw in a Kellen Clemens. And actually didn't do that bad. But if the Rams had Sam Bradford throughout that whole season, I think that team could have been potentially going for a playoff spot over the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, it's definitely it begs the question as to what the potential is for the Rams in the 2014 season, given that the Niners and the Seahawks, you'd expect them to be the same. But we took a look at the Arizona Cardinals during the very first team breakdown, and partner, I thought that they were about a 9 or 10 win football team, and overall, they're a team that St. Louis can beat down. They can win, at least split the series, if not take control of Arizona, which means that they could be in the running for the 6th and final wild card spot. It'll be interesting to see, one, whether Sam Bradford improves off of last year, where, Robert, you thought he was pretty good, and number two, whether this team can just stay healthy, period. 16 games under a Sam Bradford could beg some pretty nice things for the St. Louis Rams in the 2014 season.
Nick, I was just disappointed to see him down, and, I don't like how a lot of people give a lot of crap to Sam Bradford. He's not a bad quarterback. I understand maybe you don't have the best wide receiver core around you, but you have a tight end that's really going to help you out, like a Jared Cook. And he really helped out this team, had 5 touchdowns this season, had 671 yards in receiving, and Jared Cook just keeps on getting better and better every season and keeps on improving. But Sam Bradford had to go down early, and it was really disappointing to see, especially if you're a Rams fan. And I thought the Rams actually, they could have been a 9-win ball club if you threw in Sam Bradford. They didn't have a hard schedule in 2013. It was just that they just had a lot of injuries that caused them to lose the games.
Yeah, St. Louis ranked, actually, according to last year's numbers, they were a pretty good ball club. They were 9th in the NFL in rushing with 103 yards per game, and that passing attack wasn't too bad. Now, the yardage mark would be pretty, begs the question as to who the backup should be, given that Kellen Clemens actually had to take over for half the year. They ranked 27th in passing yards, but the touchdowns that Sam Bradford threw really helped spark this club to a real nice start to the early portions of the year. They hobbled towards the finish line, but if you have a Tavon Austin there and you throw in a couple of the great players that they got via the draft, we'll talk about a little bit later, you have yourself a real nice team. Offensive side of the ball, I'm not too worried anymore, given that Sam Bradford over the last couple of years has taken, while they may be small, they may be baby steps, and Robert, Sam Bradford, we can agree, is not a top 5 quarterback, but he is a guy that can win and win with regularity, which I expect him to do in 2014.
And this is one of my favorite type of quarterbacks, even though he's not a top 5. He is a pocket type of passer. He runs a couple of times, but besides that, this guy can really just stay in the pocket, can really find one of his wide receivers wide open. That's what he did throughout the first half of the season. But when he gets injured, you got to go with the backup. Kellen Clemens now goes to San Diego, which makes no sense to me. But
Yeah,
Kellen, I know you agree with me on that, Nick. But it's gonna be hard to say what's gonna happen for the St. Louis Rams with a backup. But I think Sam Bradford's gonna have a comeback type of season. I mean, this ball club has a tough schedule, which really worries me. I mean, Nick, looking at the schedule, it was hard for me. It was kind of half and half. But they did really well in the 2014 draft. This team keeps on improving every year, and that's what I like about the Rams. They're just in a tough division. If they were switched to any other division, I think they would I think they would probably make the playoff. I think they went to the AFC. I think they would be playoff caliber teams. You see that D line? There's not a lot of good D lines in the AFC. But when you look at the Rams, man, you look at Robert Quinn, 19 sacks. Unbelievable. And their D-line is, man, they're one of the scariest. I think it's one of the most scariest in the NFL. I think it's the number one D-line in the NFL.
You throw in an Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh, and you can certainly make the argument. Robert Quinn, Aaron Donald, Chris Long. This defensive front is fantastic and get to the quarterback with regularity. They were a top 10 defense overall a season ago, which really is impressive. I mean, the numbers, they were actually 13th in points allowed per game, only 22 points per game allowed, which is towards the top of the league and will really be good. I love the improvement of a Janoris Jenkins at the cornerback position, and James Laurinaitis. Not many people talk about him, because he's a St. Louis Ram, I believe, but he's one of the young, up-and-coming, great linebackers in the NFL. People talk about a Kiko Alonso and a Luke Kuechly. Throw in a Laurinaitis into the mix as well, and you have yourself a really nice defensive group. The safeties were a cause for concern. They weren't a top tier, you could say, but they have a cornerback group along with the defensive front that are one of the best in the NFL. And we were talking statistics. The 19 sacks, absolutely ridiculous by Robert Quinn, one of the best in the NFL. Why we aren't talking about him as a potential defensive player of the year is, quite baffling. But you also look at 8.5 sacks by Chris Long, 5.5 by Michael Brockers, and another 5 by Kendall Langford, and you have yourself, Robert, one of the best defensive fronts in the league.
And Nick, I also want to go to a linebacker that he got drafted by the Rams this season, and Alec Ogletree really stood out this season. 117 tackles, and no one really thought this guy would be that great. He really just stepped in a starting role and got the job done. Got drafted in the first round, and really just made a huge impact. He's only 22. Now Alec Ogletree, man, this guy is gonna really just help. I think he's gonna make an impact for the next 5 to 6 years, maybe even more, maybe even 10 years. Watch out, because this guy, look what he has now. He's just gonna keep on improving every season.
Yeah, obviously Alec Ogletree, one of the best young linebackers in the league. You can expect him to be one for the defensive players of the year in the upcoming years. James Laurinaitis, it's just a 1-2 combination that really should pay some huge dividends for St. Louis down the line. And make sure to stay tuned, as we'll have the schedule release upcoming and predict game by game what the Rams will do. And that defense against a lot of the top offenses in the NFL, we have the Rams winning. At least I do. And I think it's going to be an extremely fascinating set of circumstances there for St. Louis, because you throw in a Sam Bradford who can rally a quarterback or can rally an offense, put up 20, 25 points every game, which would be more than good enough to win a majority of the contest, and you have yourself a great, great team. That defense, watch out for him. Also, one thing that we forgot to mention about Alec Ogletree is the 6 forced fumbles that he had, which wasn't even the top for the team. Robert Quinn had 7 forced fumbles. Not only can these guys apply pressure and obviously be stout in the run game, but they can definitely create some big time turnovers as well.
I know, a lot of people could say Laurinaitis and Alec Ogletree were the only linebackers that made the impact, and that's true. Jolyn Dunbar on the strong side, just didn't he didn't really make much of an impact this season, and it's tough when you only have that 1-2 punch in that linebacker position. I guess the 1-2 punch is all you need, but it's good to have a strong linebacker core, especially when your strong side could be a little bit stronger. But when you look at the D line, Chris Long, 8.5 sacks. He had 1 touchdown, and that's when he had the fumble recovery. And these guys just forced fumbles like no other team. And really, their D-line just really helped out, and they just picked them up and kept on getting touchdowns for this team. Kellen Clemens didn't have to do a ton. It was more just the defense really having to do their part. And Kendall Langford, I know he's probably not going to start this year, but still 5 sacks, not too bad. But when you throw in an Aaron Donald, you can't wait to see what he can do. I mean, that D-line just keeps on getting better and better every season. And then Brockers, as you said, Nick, 5.5. I mean, geez, what else are we going to have? 19 sacks on the right defensive end? Yes, we are. And Robert Quinn he's the best right defensive end I think he's the best defensive end in this league with 19 sacks and really knows how to get to a quarterback. Pretty much in every single game he had a sack. So he can get to any quarterback. And he even got through Joe Staley for the 49ers. Nick, if the Rams were in a different division, they would be set. This team is winning record. This team makes the playoffs. I think they would make a good run. And it's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate they're with Seattle and the 49ers.
Yeah.
It's just really depressing. I know I'm going to go on about this, but this team is so good on paper, but then when you see the divisions, you're like, oh, well, they're in the NFC West. So they're not going to win a ton of games. They still won 7-9 with a backup quarterback. Not too shabby in my book.
Yeah, definitely fascinating. But mind you, this team is so good that they actually have close to a winning record in the last 3 years against the NFC West. Arguably the best division over the last 3 years in football. I mean, obviously that does play a role. I mean, to have to play great teams every week, that definitely takes an impact towards the latter portion of the year. It's hard to play so many games against top-flight opponents, which is why you see St. Louis maybe dropping a game that they should have won, but they just have been so fatigued because they played the Seahawks a week earlier, or they played the Niners in Candlestick. They had to fly cross country. That's the other thing that's not exactly put on paper. When they have to play their divisional opponents, not only do they have to do it most of the time on prime time television, but they have to fly across the country. Most of your divisional opponents are within your general area, not in the NFC West. St. Louis has to travel all the way to the West Coast 3 separate times that week, and they have to play some of the top teams in the NFL: Seattle, Arizona, and San Francisco. Definitely not only racking up the miles, but racking up the injuries and any sort of ailments that they have the following Monday definitely can attribute that to playing the Niners, Seahawks, and Cardinals every other week. Definitely interesting and will be fun to watch this coming year too.
Nick, there's one thing I want to point out. In Week 8, they were so close to beating Seattle.
Yes, they were.
And their defense pretty much kept them in it. I know a lot of people, the secondary for Seattle is better than the St. Louis Rams, but the defensive line for the Rams is way better than the Seattle Seahawks. So you can kind of see this, they compete in a tough league, or in a tough division, and in a tough league. And they do have a tough schedule, but we'll be getting to that. But, I mean, looking at their 2013 schedule, man, they could have had some big-time wins. I think at Dallas they should have gotten a win. I know it's on the road. It's always tough to get wins on the road. But I think they could have battled out, week 2 and 3. I think they could have split 1-1 on the road with Sam Bradford. And Sam Bradford didn't do too bad. I mean, he pretty much threw for over 200 yards almost every game in the 7 games he was in. And unfortunately, it's just sad to see, like, you see all these you see all these passing yards for him, and it's a heartbreaker to see him lose. But I mean,
well, the one great thing is that they get an Aaron Donald via the draft. Forget any of the free agent acquisitions, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute. They get an Aaron Donald that'll help that defensive front. I mean, he's basically the fifth best player on their team right now. And you also throw in a first-round draft pick for the or also, one more thing I want to add is a Trey Mason. They got the running back via the draft. But you throw in a Greg Robinson, you got yourself a 1-2 punch that's going to win a lot of games for you. That receiving core, they could have gotten Odell Beckham instead of an Aaron Donald. That would have been fun to watch. But they still get two great players at while they aren't key needs, they'll help the rest of the team really improve.
I think one position they should have touched on, I think, is center Scott Wells. I don't know, he hasn't really been healthy. He hasn't been healthy, a couple last seasons. Played 12 games. And the center position is kind of the iffy part of that O-line. I think something they can improve on. But, when you're adding Greg Robinson, I think this team is going to I think this O-line is going to really help out Sam Bradford. I think that's how they're going to be winning games this season. It all depends. It's pretty much on the quarterback to see what he can do with his wide receiver core. He has weapons around him. What can he do with it? He has an O-line that can help him out. He has no excuses this season to say that his O-line messed up. His O-line will protect him.
I definitely have to agree with you. Robinson and the other left tackle, I'm actually drawing a blank on who the Rams have at both both tackle positions. I want to take a look at that in just a moment. But they have a great offensive line now. The center position may be cause for concern. The guards are not exactly heralded and well known. But they got themselves some pretty nice key pieces to not only now but also the future. Take a look at St. Louis down the line. A lot of young and up-and-coming superstars. Just looking at Alec Ogletree in there on that defensive side of the football. And you got yourself a great, great defensive group partner.
Well, you always do. And Jake Long, my bad, has been there for quite a long time, but still, he could play. He could play. So if he could play, you are ready to go. And the right tackle, it kind of was a little inconsistent last year. You can kind of tell, Nick. You had Roger Saffold, who started 9 games last season, and then you also had Joe Barksdale, who had
But one good thing is that Saffold is now going. He's now with another football team. I forget who, but he's no longer St. Louis Ram.
Oh, he's a Raider now, huh?
Yeah, he's a Raider.
Yeah, so you're gonna see a Joe Barksdale.
But, yeah, so that's what they do with the tackle position. They give Robert Quinn a 5th-year option, and they signed at the center spot via the draft Demetrius Rainey. Don't know too much about him, but he should be obviously someone I believe is going to they think is going to be in the rotation. And also, if not, I'm taking a look at who else they got. And listen, on that offensive line, you can't help but maybe sign a couple of other players. Emmanuel McCray on the offensive line. Oh, no, they actually cut him later on. They signed him, and then 3 days later they let him go. Interesting, and a Mitchell Van Dyke they got via the draft. Interesting.
And Nick, I know we could go on forever, but about this depth chart. But Nick, I want to go to the 2014 draft class, and the two first-round picks for the St. Louis Rams were on the money. We're on the money. You add Greg Robinson, left guard, whatever he plays. He can play tackle, he can play guard. Whatever you want him to play, he could play. And Greg Robinson, he's really going to help out Sam Bradford make some more passes. But Sam Bradford is a good pocket passer, so I have no worries about that. I mean, he can run in traffic and make plays. But I think now he can kind of sit back, relax, and make some passes to Chris Givens. You got Tavon Austin Pettis, Brandon Quick. Now you got a new Kenny Britt over there and a Stephen Bailey. I mean, there's some guys that, you're not going to even know for the Rams. A lot of people are like, hello, my name is, but these wide
Right.
receivers are getting pretty well known, especially because they're so young. And
Yeah.
you have an Aaron Donald now who's really just he's gonna make an impact on that team, and he brings. I think Kendall Langford and Aaron Donald are really going to be competing for that left defensive tackle spot, which is a good thing because I think you're adding just more of a competition on that D-line, and a lot of people do want to be on that D-line. I mean, you have a William Hayes behind a Chris Long. I mean, you got to be kidding me. And William Hayes had some good stats too, 5 sacks and had a 1 interception. Then you also have an Alex Carrington. He didn't have a great season, but still give him credit for kind of giving some depth. And then Eugene Sims behind a Robert Quinn, and he had 2 sacks. So this D-line can get sacks without their starters. Let's remember that. But Aaron Donald brings a lot of depth, and this D-line still is going to have some good competition throughout the whole training camp.
Obviously, when you take a look at the depth, or take a look at that draft class, obviously the 2 names that step out are the first-round draft picks, which immediately give yourself an amazing step up above the competition. But also a couple of other draftees that really, I think, stick out is a Trey Mason, the running back that took in the latter portion of the draft. Many people pegged him as a top 2 or 3 running back. They took him late. Something to do with just I believe it was just some off the field concerns and maybe a bad pro day. I don't understand why players drop so much during this off-season process. I mean, because most of what you do is on the field. Just look at Keenan Allen, a player who was fantastic and really panned out for the San Diego Chargers. I'm trying to take a look at that overall draft. And obviously, it just seems like the Rams website is sad, similar to how they ended last year. But I mean, Mitchell Van Dyke, they took. I think he should be a great player. They took him in the 7th round. Taking another look here, obviously, just Trey Mason, I think, is fantastic. Please keep it quiet about Michael Sam. But other players like a Maurice Alexander, I think, should be really good too. They took him in the 4th round. So this is a draft right now, I think, is an A, the best in the league.
You think it's the best in the league? Well, they didn't have a bad draft last year as well. That 2013 draft class really made an impact. But, talking about 2014, Greg Robinson, you got to give him an A. Aaron Donald, you got to give him an A. I think you give him A pluses. I think the Rams really, as I said, hit the money on the first round and really got the needs they wanted. But, the D-line, it's kind of a need, but it's also kind of like you want to improve that D-line even more. You want to make it even more scarier for those offensive lines to really stop that D-line. I think that D-line is really going to really stop some quarterbacks like Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick's going to be pressured a ton. Also, Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer got really pressured by that D-line a lot last year, and that's what makes I think that's what kind of makes that Rams-Cardinals rivalry keep on going. It's, they split every year, and the only reason why they only split is because the Cardinals kind of have a better offense, but then when you look at the Rams, they have a better defense, and it's kind of like, okay, does your offense win the game, or does your defense win the game? And that's what I like about that little series. But, moving on to this draft, you also have defensive back LaMarcus Joyner. And he's a corner. He could play safety. He could play a lot of different positions, and he really brings a lot to the table. And Nick, the one guy you touched on, I'm glad you touched on him in that running back position, Trey Mason. A lot of guys gave up on him. Really disappointing for teams to see him let go, but he was also kind of competing against the Carlos Hyde. And to be honest, I don't get the Niners picked him. Hopefully he makes an impact in that NFC West as well. But Trey Mason, I think, he might not be the starter because you have a second-year Zach Stacy also coming out of that 2013 draft class. Zach Stacy really stepped up. But I think Trey Mason, he was really productive. He had 1,816 rushing yards and 23 touchdowns. And, he's really had some experience kind of being, the second string running back. But I think Trey Mason is really going to help out that running game. I know a lot of people can argue that this running game is pretty weak, but Seattle has a Marshawn Lynch, and when you have the Niners, you kind of have a Frank Gore. But when you look at the Cardinals, they have a Bruce Ellington, who I thought isn't really going to make a huge impact. I think Zach Stacy is a better running back than a Bruce Ellington. So, I rank the... Why? What are you going to say?
Well, he is, definitely. But one thing I want to touch on, Zach Stacy, he's entering his second year, I love the production we got out of Zach Stacy. Nearly 4 yards a carry, 975 yards on the ground. Also a real important part of that Rams passing attack, 141 receiving yards and a touchdown. But you can't help but look at the fumbling issues involved with Zach Stacy, who, if there's only one knock on the former fifth-round pick, it's his inability to hold on to the football. Now, he only had one fumble loss last year, but he had a lot more that he put on the turf, and it really is a cause for concern for a guy that's that small, 5'8", and somebody who's so quick, because he can very easily be hurt for quite some time if he isn't careful, which is why I love the bigger, more powerful backs. And they got that out of a Trey Mason, a guy who should be able to carry more of the load. I love a 1-2 punch. Don't get me wrong, but when your halfbacks that you're carrying the football are, they're smaller than their kicker, that's obviously a cause for concern.
Well, Zach Stacy really had to step it up, and he almost have 1,000 yards in rushing, Nick. Give him credit for being a fifth-round pick and actually, making a Usually fifth-round picks don't really make much of an impact, but Zach Stacy...
Typically, they're not even in the league.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
And they still came out of nowhere and got the starting spot in the running back position because Darrell Richardson didn't really do that much. And he's not a Ram anymore. But that running game, I think it's good you got Trey Mason kind of replace the Darrell Washington. The one player that I thought was disappointing this year in that running back position was an Isaiah Peed.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit more high expectations for him, and really just fell off the face of the earth for the St. Louis Rams. But, Nick, we really haven't touched up on one part of their offense. It's really the wide receivers, and they're all young. I think that's the best part about this team. They are young. So, they're going to keep on progressing. Chris Givens, this guy just... He had 569 receiving yards this season. He didn't have any touchdowns, but he was very productive and did get yards. But one guy you got to give credit to, as I said before, Jared Cook, the tight end. He's just going to keep on getting better and better every season. And Tavon Austin, the rookie. Man, what a great punt returner he was this season for that special teams. Nick, he was really enjoyable to watch on special teams. He's explosive. You could see how he can make some moves. And it's more of like a Brian Quick who can make some catches, and then, once he has the ball for a while, he can make some spin moves. He can he could kind of catch in traffic. He's still got to learn about that, but besides that, he's got speed, and he knows how to make some moves down the stretch. And Nick, the reason why I know about this team so well, I kind of used him in Madden 25, kind of used a franchise mode.
Yeah.
And really got to know this team really well. And watching them on film as well, I watched like 30 minutes of St. Louis Rams highlights from their 2013 season. Their wide receiver core was pretty impressive. And a lot of people would say, a lot of people say, they're average. Well, they are. They have a consistent wide receiver core. They don't have that number one. They have a lot of guys that contribute to that offense. But I know they didn't have a big free agency period, which was kind of sad to me. But they really just did in the draft. But they added a Kenny Britt, who's going to really bring more depth to the wide receiver position. And another guy that no one really likes to talk about that really made an impact towards the second half of the season is Stephen Bailey. And Nick, I mean, what do you have to say about this wide receiver core? I mean, all these guys kind of made an impact. I mean, if you look down the line, you had Chris Givens, Tavon Austin, Stephen Bailey, Austin Pettis, and Brandon Quick.
Yeah, no, I actually like the Kenny Britt signing, because he should be able to flourish in that Rams coaching staff. They basically take receivers at will. These are a lot of 5th, 6th, 7th round draft picks, and they turn them into actually pretty good players. So tip your hat off to what the Rams are doing as a coaching staff. The overall coach, obviously, I love what Jeff Fisher is doing. Brian Schottenheimer is one of the more underrated offensive coordinators in the league, and also a Ray Sherman, who was a really good receiver in the league. He's the wide receivers coach for the Rams and has done a real nice job. 4 touchdowns by Tavon Austin. He didn't play the whole year. Austin Pettis, I think, is a solid receiver. And also a guy who should be able to come into the fold is actually somebody nobody's talking about. 4 touchdowns and nearly 300 yards receiving for Lance Kendricks, an up-and-coming backup tight end alongside Jared Cook, who we all know about him. He was a pretty good receiver as a tight end as well.
I like how you bring up Kendricks a lot. You know, you could really do a lot with the tight end position, and you can really do a lot with the wide receiver position, but this core for their offense is going to keep on developing. And I think, Nick, I know they might not get a winning record this year, but I think they're really gonna just improve, and I think they're eventually gonna, take 2 out of the Arizona Cardinals, and then they're gonna eventually, I think, split with the Niners and maybe even split with the Seahawks this season. And I know they went 1-5 this year in the NFC West, which is kind of heartbreaking to me. But when you only have Kellen Clemens behind you, it's kind of hard to get wins. But they still went 7-9. They got 6 wins outside of the division. But Nick, this team looks pretty well. And let's get to the grading. This is probably one of my favorite parts of this show. We pretty much get to grade the offense and defense position by position. Nick, let's start with the quarterback, Sam Bradford. I got to give him a B. He's kind of that consistent guy in that offense for the St. Louis Rams. And really is one of my favorite type of quarterbacks, pocket passer.
He's a B in my book as well. 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions is not too shabby during his time as a starting quarterback before he got hurt. And we should take a look at Robert. Do you know who the backup is for the Rams at the quarterback position? I'm actually going to pull up the depth chart.
It is Sean Hill, and they did sign him. He was the one of the 3 free agents they signed, and I think he's going to help out.
Sean Hill?
Yeah, Sean Hill.
Yeah, he's solid. He is.
Out of
Not
Detroit.
many people know about him either. He's actually a real good player.
He was behind Matthew
I thought
Stafford.
the best quarterback for quite some time with the Lions.
And, Nick, it's, Kellen Clemens wasn't too bad, but, I think you just need someone a little bit better, but, I'm hoping to God that Sam Bradford doesn't get hurt this season. I want him healthy this season, because if Sam Bradford gets hurt again, the Rams might not have him, and they might get rid of him. That'd be sad. It would be sad to see him go, but you also have to understand injuries are going to kind of be in effect if you can't really do much. But Sam Bradford, you need to stay healthy this season. I understand Sean Hill's behind you, but you're the captain of this team. And you have a young wide receiver core, you have young tight ends, and you have young running backs. This is a young football team, so you need to understand, you gotta stay healthy, because you're gonna have to put in Sean Hill, and this team isn't gonna get a winning record if you're not in.
Yeah, obviously that quarterback position gets a B. Robert, I'd like to hear what you have to say about the running back position. I'm just going to throw a curveball at you. That overall, the halfbacks, considering that That offensive line was so good, and I mean, I think Zach Stacy was just the beneficiary of one of the best young lines in the league. I'm going to give running backs a C+. I love a Trey Mason, don't get me wrong. Zach Stacy should be good, but just not good enough. And Isaiah P was awfully disappointing, which is the one position the Rams have been suffering with ever since they have moved to the Jeff Fisher era, and they've gotten rid of a Steven Jackson. The one and only position that the Rams are suffering with in the last few years.
Nick, you do throw a curveball at me. I mean, I was a little shocked you even said a C+. I'm going to give him a B-. I mean, you lost Daryl Richardson, it's going to hurt you a little bit. I know he wasn't, one of the greatest running backs, but, I look at the running back position and I say, Zach Stacy, that was a steal in the draft. Almost 1,000 yards rushing. And, I give credit to this O-line. Don't get me wrong, Nick. I like their O-line, but also Zach Stacy, he could really just get off the ball. I mean, yeah, he can't carry the ball very well, but, I mean, he has speed. And
he does?
He does. He does, and I saw it in film. I don't know if you watch film, Nick, but I do. And that's my proof. Zach Stacy does have speed and he could kind of be exposed to Trey Mason. I think this guy is someone to watch out for. He's going to be a notable in some games, but I mean, out of Auburn, I think you're going to be pretty solid. And also another guy, you have Benny Cunningham. Didn't kind of made an impact, not really, but I mean, he had 261 rushing yards, not too bad, and played in 14 games. Isaiah P, you were very disappointing, and I don't think you might even get released through training camp. But you got to keep your job. And Nick, let's move on to the next position.
Obviously, an unheralded fullback that's going to start for the Rams, the one and only Kadeem Jones, late round draft pick for the Rams. I mean, obviously someone that we have no real substantial film on. I think St. Louis has about a C at the fullback position, but obviously not that much of a concern. I think the fullback position, you can go to two running back sets, which is what St. Louis did for a lot of last year, and it's not that bad when you have a speedster like a Zach Stacy back there.
No, you don't need to be worried. I think, the fullback position, it's, the fullback position can be important. It all depends on how your O-line is, but your O-line's fine. I give the fullback position a C, but I'm gonna give a good credit to that O-line. But Nick, move on to the wide receiver core we talked about. Chris Givens, pretty much the number one target on that wide receiver core. Tavon Austin, a second-year player. He made an impact on the wide receiver core, and really, he's a speedster type of guy. When he catches the ball, he can really run down the field, and is a young player, so watch him develop. Austin Pettis made himself known out of Boise State, and he had 4 touchdowns this season, and I feel like this wide receiver core gets like 4 touchdowns almost every player. And then Brian Quick, I want to talk about this guy. I actually like Brian Quick. He's just going to keep on getting better and better. He knows how to make moves. He's not the fastest guy on the field, but what he could do is he's a physical type of guy. He could break some tackles, bring it in the end zone. So watch out for Brian Quick. He's real. I think he's more of the effective player in the red zone. And my grade for the wide receiver core, especially when you add a Kenny Britt, I gotta say I'm gonna give him a B+. I think these guys are just gonna keep on improving every season, and the wide receiver core, I think they might get up to an A- in the next couple of years.
Yeah, the receiving core is pretty solid, but listen, I think you're a little too high on it. I give it a C+. I mean, obviously just pessimistic right now, but it's still a unit that's trying to improve, and I love Kenny Britt, and maybe I'll be eating crow later on, but a C+ is all I got to give this wide receiving core. I mean, against top flight defensive groups, Seattle held them to 9 points, even at home, and that's where I say, look, Sam Bradford, despite 4 TDs to 4 picks, the pass yardage is low, because the receivers aren't exactly great. And one thing that you can tell to help figure out receiving cores is how many catches they get. And your top wide receiver got 40 catches, Tavon Austin, which is 3 a game, far below the actual league average. So, I mean, while they do have a lot of weapons, a lot of them are about C-plus material. That's my personal opinion.
I think I'll change my grade to a B. They're kind of the consistent type. They'll keep you in games, but the tight end position, something that I love to talk about, but Jared Cook, what a man. I know this guy's he's a big guy out of South Carolina. He had 5 touchdowns this season and averaged 13.2 yards per catch. And he had the most receiving yards this season at 51 catches. He was the main target pretty much all season long, but I don't think one thing you get out of that wide receiver core, but what you don't get is Sam Bradford wasn't in. And he is a pocket passer, but he was not in for the second half of the season. I think that's why the receiving totals kind of got lower. I think Jared Cook could have had at least maybe 800 to 900 yards. But Jared Cook...
definitely... not only Jared Cook, but also throwing a Lance Kendricks. He could have improved, had more yards based off of him. So I know you didn't provide the grade yet, but I'm going to give the tight end position a B+, a solid up and coming tight end or overall position that should really help Sam Bradford improve.
I think I'll agree with you, Corey. Also give Corey Harkey out of UCLA with he had 2 touchdowns this season. Had 113 yards receiving. I don't think he did that bad either, but this tight end position you talk about, Lance Kendricks, is going to be up and coming. And we always say up and coming because this is such a young football team that I guess you could kind of say it's like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers squad. Most of their team's kind of young. They're going to keep on improving. This team is just in a tough division where they have a lot of veteran leadership on other teams. But when the Rams are going to get there at one point, Niners and the Seahawks are going to go down a little bit, and the Rams could eventually, in the next 2 to 3 years, take that NFC West. They could steal it away from any other team. But let's move on to that O-line. Nick, I mean, I gotta give this squad a B+. You know, when you have a Jake Long who's been there for years, he's still been a consistent type of player. You got the first round pick. The second round pick in the 2014 draft, Greg Robinson, he's going to be starting. He's going to start pretty much every game next season. Hopefully he can stay healthy. You know, the center position is kind of my if part on this O-line. Scott Wells, he's a good center, but he needs to stay healthy throughout the whole season. David Joseph, not too bad. He's played every game all season. Really made an impact. You lose a Roger Saffold and out in Joe Barksdale, who started 13 games last season. Not too bad. I think this O-line is really going to help out Sam Bradford throughout the whole season, especially when you got a Greg Robinson.
Sam Bradford played, I think, 8 or 9 games, and in nearly 300 pass attempts, he was only sacked 15 times. Are you kidding me? That running game wasn't fantastic by that. I mean, it actually was towards the bottom of the league, 19th. And the receivers, I don't think, were all that spectacular. So to only give up that many sacks, I think is amazing. I give this, I don't understand why you give it a B+. I give it an A. I think this offensive line is fantastic.
I think I'm going to change my grade later in the season, Nick, but you're kind of like iffy on the wide receivers. I'm kind of iffy on the O-line still. The only issue I have is the center position, Nick. That's the only problem. But when you pretty much add in Greg Robinson, he was probably the best O-line. He was the best offensive lineman in that draft, and you got him. So hopefully Greg Robinson can help you out and really can make an impact. But let's move on. Defensive side of the ball. I don't know how you can give this D-line a B or lower, or even an A- or lower. You gotta give these guys an A. They have the depth. They can pretty much get to the quarterback whenever they want, and can get to the running back because the linebacking core can really help you out. But Nick, you got You got Chris Long, 8.5 sacks. Aaron Donald, who's going to be up and coming this season, and really just a really smart pick and adds more depth to that D-line. You got Michael Brockers, 5.5 sacks. And, geez, this is probably the best defensive lineman in the game. You have 19 sacks out of Robert Quinn and 7 forced fumbles. Given an A.
Oh, and this is the first time I've ever done this on this show. I'm going to give a unit an A+. This defensive line is perfect. It is. It's just perfect across the board. Chris Long should have 1 or 2 more great years under him. Aaron Donald may not even start. Michael Brockers is in there. Kendall Langford, former Dolphin. Robert Quinn, 20 sacks, and he's still a young player. William Hayes, former Titan, and Eugene Sims are your starters and backups. All players that can come in and contribute. Don't forget about 7th-round pick Michael Sam, who could come in a time or two in pass rushing situations. Maybe. He could be cut very easily, either or. But nevertheless, 8 guys that could come in and start anywhere in the league, and they're all in the defensive line.
And we actually totally forgot to talk about Michael Sam, Nick. That is the one person we left out. Wasn't he supposed to go to the Chargers?
I mean, the only thing he's going to be attacking is another slice of cake. Okay, I don't think he's going to quarterbacks anytime soon. He tried for a little while. Obviously, I don't know exactly how true this is, but I mean, for a while he was going to be sponsored by Oprah. He was going to be on their show. I don't know about Michael Sam. I don't.
Well, we can find out this season. I don't think he's going to play a couple of games, but not too much. Hopefully, we can get to that quarterback. But Nick, go to the linebacking core. Jolin Dunbar really didn't make much of an impact. He only had 39 tackles. But when you go to James Laurinaitis, he's a veteran on this team out of Ohio State. 116 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumble recoveries. He's a hard hitter, knows how to get to the running back, and he's a big dude. He's he's 6'2", and really the running backs, you're gonna be scared of him if he's coming up the middle or even the A or B gap. Then you have second-year player Alec Ogletree. Man, this has got to be out of all the rookies last season, he's got to be the best defensive rookie of the year. Alec Ogletree, 117 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 interception and a touchdown. Man, I think this guy's perfect. I think he's just going to keep on getting better and better. But Jolin Dunbar is the only player I have an issue with. And when you have an issue with him, you give him a B.
Wow, I'm going to give this unit an A- because you have 2 great players. Jolin Dunbar should not be all that good of a contribution, as you said, but he could be a number 3, pretty good linebacker. They run more of a 4-3 set, which means that they're only going to play 3 linebackers. And don't forget about Aaron Hill and Ray Armstrong, 2 young up-and-coming linebackers there for them. A- I think is a fair grade to give that position.
Well, let's go on to the cornerback position. You have Trumaine Johnson had 3 picks last season, and Janoris Jenkins. Did I say that right?
Janoris Jenkins.
Janoris Jenkins. 61 tackles, had 1 sack and an interception. And they did draft the LaMarcus Joyner, who should be helping them out with and also behind Jenkins is a Brandon McGee. Nick, I'm not too excited about the cornerback position. It's not one of my favorites. It's probably gonna be my low grade for the defense. For the grading the defense, I gotta give them a C. They're not all that great. And Trumaine Johnson, he's kind of like an average type of corner, getting 3 picks.
I thought this cornerback position wasn't too bad, given that Janoris Jenkins was basically the recipient of every number 1 receiver they played, and he actually did a pretty nice job. This pass defense as a whole, given that they have a great defensive line, still ranked number 19 in the league, which isn't too bad against the pass. They played a lot of real good opponents during the 2013 season, a lot of good quarterbacks, that is. So I think that the B that I'm going to give them is an
Ooh.
overall solid grade for them. Understandably, the players they have in front are great, but they played a lot of really good opponents, and given that division's actually pretty good, and they keep that point total to a minimum there against the NFC West.
I don't know. I just don't like this cornerback position. It's just not one of my favorites, but it's also, this is opinionated. So let's move on to the free safety and strong safety position. You have Ronnie McLeod, who had 79 tackles last season, 2 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, and a TJ McDonald. I really, this safety position was they're kind of hard hitters. They really broke up a lot of passes. And you can also add in, you can't really add in anyone else because Matt Daniels behind McLeod didn't really do that much. But Nick, I like their free safety and strong safety position. The one player that needs to stay healthy though is a TJ McDonald. Besides that, I think the squad is pretty good. I'll give them a C+.
Wow, you're just throwing out real horrible grades. I don't like the safety unit that much, but I still think it's a solid crew. TJ McDonald is a real good safety. I give him a B-. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but geez, man, you are handing out C's across the board. What is the deal?
I only like their D-line, dude. Their linebacking position isn't too bad. I give him a B. That's consistent. It's the D-line that makes...
I mean,
okay, Nick, their D-line makes the defense. Period. I don't like their corners at all. Period. I mean, I don't know if we ever gave a D+ on this show yet, but if we... I mean, they're... Okay, Nick...
You're going to rate... You're actually... Let me pull this up, okay? The other thing, based off of statistics alone... The linebacking crew, the 1-2 punch that the Rams have, is something like top 3 in the league, only behind like the Niners and I mean I'm forgetting the other team. But tackle wise, 230 tackles among Alec Ogletree and James Laurinaitis, and the 6 forced fumbles and 5 sacks, and you give that a B.
Where's the winning record at, Nick? Where's the winning record? Where's the winning record at?
Wait, hold on. Robert, you ranked the Chargers cornerback crew the same level that you ranked the Rams cornerback crew. You can name the top 3 on the Rams. I don't know if you can on the Chargers. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there, right? I'm just putting that in the air, right? I feel like a bird. I feel free, right? Because I feel purged. I feel like released.
Damn it! I really don't like you right now. I only like certain amount of corners. What did I give the Jets?
You gave the Jets,
Didn't I give the Jets I gave the Jets about a C too, I would have to say.
I'm trying to find that right now.
I don't know.
The Jets, you gave them, drumroll please, you gave them a C+.
Give them a C+? Yeah, well, because it's D. Milliner.
D. Milliner, Kyle Wilson, Dimitri Patterson, and Ross.
They have a pretty good cornerback crew, though. I mean, okay, Nick, I can name the Chargers cornerbacks. You have a Jason Verrett, who better do freaking well this season for you guys. And then a Sharice Wright. I mean, Jesus. Sharice Wright, yeah.
1 pick. Great job.
Yeah, okay. You make an argument.
Yeah. Listen, they're not an A. They're not an A.
Well,
I was just trying to give them credit where credit's due.
There's no credit with these guys, though. These guys stink. I'm sorry. And
Nevertheless,
your cornerback crew is not great. If we're gonna go on about the Chargers here, we can, because you guys have a strong safety position. You have freaking Eric Weddle. He had over 100 tackles at free safety. So if you're giving me crap for this, their safety position for the Rams with Ronnie McLeod had 79 tackles. He didn't do that bad with 2 interceptions. but he's a hard hitter. So if you want me to regrade, I will. I will give the linebacking core, I'll give it a B+.
B+. I like it.
All right, you're making it strong. I'm still going to keep the cornerback position at SC. I just don't like it enough.
Nevertheless, right, the defense gets an A-. The first time we've done that, given the defensive line is so good, and the safeties we thought were actually not too bad, and the offense gets a B-. And taking a look at the coaching staff, I give the coaching staff about a B+, and the special teams about a B+. Do you agree?
I agree with you. Jeff Fisher is a good coach. He's just in tough competition.
He's not like the best, but
no.
He's top 10, definitely up there.
Yeah, because he's kept this team within about 500 or less. I mean, congratulations for actually keeping your team within a tough division. This team could be like 5-11 or 6-10. Jeff Fisher wins them games. He has some strategic moves up his sleeve. He knows how to work with young players.
This is about a similar talent level to when Steve Spagnuolo was the coach for the Rams. And then you totally revamped that. And I think the coaching staff, maybe even an A- when you talk about the job they've done with their wide receivers. But I think a B+ is a solid grade for them because they couldn't get out of the snide against a number of great teams. I go back to the Seattle game where they could not make the plays necessary to win. That's where they are not a type of a coaching staff, but just a B+, where they can't take the next step. If they do so this year, obviously a far different grade heading into 2015, but still one of the best overall ranked teams in the league based off of the team breakdowns we've done so far, and the greatest ranked defense maybe that we'll ever have here on Team Breakdowns. We'll have to wait and see on that. Obviously, other teams in the division have a thing or two to say about that sort of a ranking, but the Rams, an A- type of a defense, they ranked in the top 10 in everything last year, and they should be good again.
I think they're better defense than Arizona just because Arizona lost Darrell Washington. He got suspended. I know we didn't get to say that, but we're talking NFC West here, and Nick, losing Darrell Washington to Arizona losing him to a year suspension, that is tough.
It's tough.
I don't know how, Nick, I kind of want to redo their schedule now. I feel like I got to give the Cardinals, I think they're going to go 8-8 for Arizona.
Yeah, we're talking about the Rams, though, right?
I know we are, but, we're talking about, this is technically NFC West.
Well, that's true.
It is. But we haven't covered we still haven't covered the two playoff teams yet, which will be fun to watch.
I feel you.
But we'll see. We haven't even covered special teams yet. Let's move on to special teams.
Special
Tavon
teams
Austin
is a B+, man. Just because that Greg the leg kicker, only 2 missed field goals all last year.
And when you throw in a Tavon Austin, that punt return, and Austin Pettis, you're good. I gotta give this unit an A-.
Ooh. Okay.
Because they pretty much that unit helps out Tavon Austin so much, and Austin Pettis. They helped them. Austin Pettis returned one for the house.
Yeah.
And Tavon Austin did too.
Yeah.
So they had that. It's pretty much that whole special teams unit pretty much contributes. That's why you gotta give him an A-.
It's true. That definitely is true. As we move on, I'm sure you're ready to do so with that. Given that a lot of what the Rams do is about a B+ or A- type caliber, outside of maybe what you give the fullback and wide receiver position, and halfbacks are definitely questionable as well. But I'm sure you want to take a look at that schedule. Am I wrong?
I am not wrong. Let's move on here. We're gonna get the music going. But Nick, what's thoughts here on this schedule? They have a tougher schedule than last season.
They do, and it was tough a season ago as well. Their opening stint, I think, is pretty favorable to that team. They could at least win 2 out of 3. They have the bye extremely early. It's still September, week number 4, and then they come back with an extremely rigorous final 12 weeks, really. They play, out of the final 12 teams that they play, a grand total, wait to hear this, a grand total of 2 teams that they play or excuse me, 4 teams actually, but a number of them. Take a look at the Cardinals twice. 2 of them are basically teams that should have been playoff caliber. So really, you could say 2 teams, the Redskins and the Giants, were obvious teams that should not have made the playoffs, and actually the Raiders too. So that's 3 out of the final 12 teams. That's amazing. So it's going to be a real tough home slate.
Are you sure the Raiders weren't supposed to make the playoffs? Because I thought they did.
They made the playoffs for the worst team in the league.
Oh, friggin' Terrell Pryor's gone though. That's kind of weird, huh?
He was a real game changer.
That was reckless over there. But let's move on to the schedule. The music is going to be coming on momentarily. I don't get why Spreaker does that. I play the music and it doesn't play. Spreaker's got to fix that, man.
It's a tragedy, man.
It's a tragedy. We're on NFL primetime, and it's not working. But let's get on. Week 1, you play at home versus Minnesota. Nick, I know you gave them the loss, but I give them the win. I think this team can really rush Matt Castle and get the W.
Then week 2, we both think the Rams beat the Bucks. Start the year at least 1-1. You think they go 2-0, and I think that's actually a pretty good start there for St. Louis.
Then they go home and play Dallas. And Nick, I think they get the win here. I think against the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas isn't going to be good this year. They're going to really struggle.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys win, the Rams win too. Dallas had their nod last year, but in most of the meetings, the Cowboys have no answer to what St. Louis is doing. They match up extremely well, and I think the Cowboys, for the first time in quite some time, will actually have a losing record, and they'll do so by a mile. I give the Rams the win, entering the bye.
They're 3-0, undefeated. Then they go into week 4, and Nick, they're going to be playing at Philadelphia. This is going to be a tough game for them. But Nick, this is my surprise pick. Watch out. I give them the win. They go 4-0. 4-0, baby. And the Rams, man, they could be leading the NFC West right now.
Yeah, I give the Rams obviously 14 days to prepare for an Eagles team. Despite it's at Philadelphia, you got to believe Jeff Fisher will be able to rally the troops, if you will. But I give them the loss because Philadelphia is just a real great ball club, and you can't prepare for such a talented team like the Eagles. Their second loss of the year. In my books, they're 2-2 to start the season.
All right, let's move on. You go to Monday Night Football at home versus the San Francisco 49ers. Nick, they're going to get the loss. The Niners have had the Rams nod last season. I think they're going to have it this season as well.
By knowledge, you mean by a grand total of, 10, 14 points in both meetings? I give the Rams the win at home over San Francisco. Get your popcorn ready, as this is going to be a wild ride. The Rams, following that loss, they basically come back with a vengeance, and it's a big W. They go to 3-2.
All right, well then they're at home versus Seattle. And Nick, this is another loss for Seattle. Seattle loses to San Diego. That schedule we predicted, and they lose to the St. Louis Rams. The Rams were close last season at home versus the Seahawks, losing only 14-9. They get the job done and beat Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, they have the firepower now to score those extra 6 points necessary to beat that team, and they win potentially 15-14 in a slugfest. Seattle in St. Louis has struggled mightily, and they do so again. Give the Rams the win.
All right, and then you move on. You go to at Kansas City. This is a road game, and they struggled on the road, and I gotta give them the loss here to Kansas City after a win. It's just tough to come back. I think it's gonna be tough against Kansas City because when you got a Jamal Charles, I think they're gonna run all over you.
Yeah, it's the first of a 3-game road trip for the Rams, and they start off with a loss at Kansas City, which, listen, that's not all that bad of a job for the Rams to do. It's not too shabby when you have to play the Chiefs. I'm sure they'll keep it close, but it's a loss.
Then you go to at San Francisco Levi Stadium, and that's the first time they're going to be in that stadium. Nick, I got to give them the loss, and they're going to take the series. The Niners are going to take the series from the Rams once again.
Actually, the surprise of the century. I'm going to give the Rams the win over the Niners, and it's going to be 0-2. The San Francisco is against St. Louis. I just think the Rams have enough in order to overtake a Niners team that, I mean, listen, I think the cornerback crew got worse, and obviously that's a team in the Rams that play them very close every year.
Well, Nick, you're against the Niners right now. I'm a little disappointed, but you go to Week 10 at Arizona. Nick, I got to give them the win. I mean, after 2 straight losses on the road, you got to give them 1 win, and they're going to get the win at Arizona.
And I think they lose. I think Arizona does a real nice job at home. They'll be able to come through and win. Give the Rams a loss, which is 2 out of 3 on the road there in the road stint.
Let's move on to Week 11. They come back home after a 3-game road trip. But Nick, it's going to be tough playing the Denver Broncos when you're going against Peyton Manning. And you're in a tough situation because they have a great passing game. The corners aren't ready for it. Denver gets the win.
I think so too. The Rams lose against the Denver Broncos, one of the best teams in the AFC.
And then you go to another AFC game. You go at San Diego. And Nick, we predicted this schedule before, and we gave the Rams a loss here. I think San Diego just has a little bit more firepower and better offense.
Yeah, the Chargers play November and December very well. They have a winning record during those months, and they provide those San Diego fans with a huge victory. The Rams, well, let's believe, lose the last 2 games.
Then they play the Oakland Raiders, and they're a veteran team, but Nick, they're not going to get the job done against a young squad that is looking for revenge after having a loss against San Diego away. So give them the win versus Oakland.
I think so too. It's at home. It's a real important game towards the latter portion of the year. Week 13, the Rams get it done over the Oakland Raiders.
Then you go to Week 14. You go at Washington, Nick. This is gonna be a surprising game. I know you're probably gonna give them the loss, but I'm gonna give them the win at Washington. I think this is just gonna be one of their big games. They get the job done.
Yeah, I was tossing and turning too, but I'm gonna give Washington the loss. I think the Rams get it done, and they have back-to-back victories, and not at a more critical time.
Then you go to Week 15. You play Arizona at home, and Nick, they're gonna get the loss. Arizona looking for revenge. When the Rams came to Arizona, they got the win. Arizona comes to St. Louis, and they get the W.
Yeah, I think that they split the series. The Rams win against the Cardinals at home, as it's going to be an extremely important time. The head coaching staff is going to provide some late season heroics to help the Rams get over the top.
Then you play the New York Giants. And Nick, they're going to get the loss here. I think New York stacks up just a little bit better. I mean, the defense. The Rams have the better defense, but I think when you look at the secondary, the New York Giants are just a little bit better. And the wide receiver core, the Giants, I think, really improved.
The Rams are going to be scrambling like a herd of cattle to make the postseason. They win in Week 16, last-second heroic. To beat the Giants, I don't think New York is ready to take the next step. A lot of us, in fact, going back to the Giants team breakdown, we pegged New York at going about something like a 9-7 or an 8-8. So I give the Rams the win last second over the Giants.
Let's go on to Week 17 at Seattle, Nick. When you're at Seattle, it's tough. I mean, they went 8-0 last season at home. It's going to happen again. Seattle gets the win at home and beats the St. Louis Rams, and that's going to end my record at 7-9 once again.
7-9, disappointing. I do give the loss in Week 17. I think the Rams just don't have enough firepower in Seattle. Are you kidding me? But the big difference was the 2 losses you had, the Rams have over the Niners, I believe, correct? Yes, and then I give them 2 wins. So that was the difference in what I think is a 9-7 finish for the St. Louis Rams. You think they go 7-9.
All right, well, that's our predictions. And, Nick, this was this is really different.
For the first time.
Yeah, you really don't like the Niners in this NFC West, do you?
Well, I love them. I think they digressed, and the St. Louis Rams, they improved, which is going to be the big difference in taking a look at what the Rams and Niners have done over the last few years has been real astonishing. It's been, if you're into defense, it's good to watch television, but overall, I think it's a real boring type of a game, but I think it's going to lull the Niners to sleep. And, unless they really get some offensive firepower, it's not going to be all that good. As you take a look at the series situation, the Niners do have a 5-2-1 record since 2010 against them, but in every game it's been real close for the Rams. Most of the outside of one dominating performance in 2011. Let's just take the last 5 games. 34-27 Niners win, 24-24 tie, obviously, 16-13 Rams win, 23-13 the Niners win in 2013, and obviously one game that actually wasn't all that close, 35-11. But nevertheless, only one dominating performance in 5 games where the Rams won 1, they tied 1, and the Niners won 3. It's been extremely close nearly every time.
It's football is a fun game to watch, and Nick, I don't like how you said the Niners don't have enough offensive power. We got Stevie Johnson, we got Anquan Bolden, we got Michael Crabtree, we have Frank Gore, we have freaking Lattimore, we have Carlos Hyde, Kendall Hunter. Maybe a lot of people could say you don't like Colin Kaepernick. He's not one of my favorite quarterbacks. He's our quarterback. You gotta live with him. They're assumingly at training camp, they're trying to reorganize the offense there, and I think it's gonna work out. So I think the Niners could be in better shape in that offense. The corners, that's gonna be my question mark for the Niners this season. But going on with the Rams, I think they're gonna split with Arizona and Seattle. I think they could beat Seattle. Seattle, it was such a close game, but they only had Kellen Clemens. If they had a Sam Bradford in there, they had the W. Period. Had the W.
Listen, it would be an upset of colossal proportions if they can get a winning record against that division. Obviously, the head runners are Seattle and San Francisco. It's going to be fun to watch, partner. Every game in that division, and we are lucky to have a number of games on prime time. We mentioned Monday Night Football, the Niners and the Rams. Also, a number of games. I believe one of them is on. Not the Rams, but the Niners Seahawks on Thanksgiving. But a number of these games are in prime time, and a number of them are going to be with playoff potential on the line. We mentioned Week 17, Rams at Seahawks. That's huge. Week 10, the Rams at the Cardinals. Week 9 at the 49ers. Huge games towards the latter portion of the year.
This NFC West is going to be tough, Nick. It's just going to come down to the wire to see who's the better team. Seattle, they got a chip on their shoulder. They just won the Super Bowl. Can they win it again? The 49ers come so close, but then they lose towards the end. And that interception towards the end of that game against Seattle and Richard Sherman and that deflection over Michael Crabtree, I'll never forget that play. That's going to be in everyone's mind. And the Rams, just in a tough division, still a young team. And eventually, I think they're going to be winning that NFC West, and I think in the next 2 or 3 years.
Wow, it's extremely interesting to have the Rams as a potential division winner, but it's a real likely scenario given that the Rams have potentially another good draft or 2. They had one in 2014. Same with 2013. We believe this year's was good too. But overall, a great team down there in St. Louis.
You can say that about the Jets too. The Jets didn't have a bad pick. They didn't have a bad draft class either. But I think out of every team we covered, I think I believe the Rams I think they had one of the best draft classes and made really good picks just because they got 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, obviously should be fun to watch, man. Can't wait to see it. And the Rams, either 9-7 or 7-9, still an improved ball club over last year.
the Rams just need to, got to pull out some wins. I know I'm saying 7-9 just because they have a tough schedule. But I think, as I said, in the next 2 to 3 years, I think that team will just be ready to go, and they're going to have that experience now. When they have that experience under their belt, this team will be ready to go. And when Sam Bradford, I want to see it. Nick, I think this team could go maybe an 8-8 or 9-7. I'm not saying they can't. It's just, it's just all on Sam Bradford. Is he going to be okay after this injury? That's just a big question to me. RG3 didn't really come back the way we thought, and he struggled. But can the Redskins get something going this season as well? That's going to be something interesting to find out. But I feel like we've always had some QB situations, except for the Packers, except for the Chargers, the Chiefs. We've had a couple of those teams where it's just like, oh, we don't have to worry about that. It's all about the other positions. But, we're going to wrap it up here, Nick. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts, I think, is the Rams. You can expect them to basically rank in the top 5 on the defensive side. Turnovers are going to come with regularity for the Rams. And on the offensive side, I think Sam Bradford actually doesn't play too bad. But I still think that St. Louis is ready to move on, given that they have basically been 7-9 or 6-10 close to every year. They just don't have the offensive firepower, 27th in passing, to do so. I think the big takeaway based off of this depth chart is that it's a make-or-break year for Bradford. They brought in a couple weapons, and they really helped him with some defensive firepower, and it's going to be fun to watch down the line.
Well, thank you for listening to NFL Team Breakdowns. This was our 10th team, but our 11th team for NFL Team Breakdowns is the Atlanta Falcons. Can Matt Ryan get the job done this season? Well, you find out next time, and thank you for listening. We want to thank all our listeners. NFL Team Breakdowns couldn't be successful without you guys. And me and Nick love to do this every week, and we're going to try and get to you a show Friday. Hopefully it can work out during the day, but besides that, thank you for listening. Have a great day, and tune in Friday night.